Welcome to the channel. This is going to be my quick overview on episode 5 of the Silo. So, season 2, episode 5. It's another good episode. Really enjoy it. Um, Writing's good. The story, you can see it building week after week, um, building towards the climax ultimately, which will probably be the season ending episode. But yeah, it's good. I really am enjoying this series. I enjoyed it so much when I saw the end of series one that I went out and bought the 3 books that make up the series. And sorry, I'm chewing on a cough candy. I have a bit of a cold. Um, but I read the 3 books in the series, which I know is a bit of a cheat because I actually know they've been following the books relatively closely. So I figure the story is going to follow the book, so I kind of know what's going on. And I have to refrain from revealing too much because I got shit in one of my other reviews for giving away a little too much. So, anyways, each episode seems to be breaking down into more or less 3 areas. One is Silo 17 that has Jules and Solo. 2 is the upper part of Silo 18, which is where Jules came from, and that's Bernard and Judiciary and all the people in IT and the people living up there. And then the third part is the lower part of the silo. Now that's mechanical typically, but mechanical's kind of intermixing with upper silo, and they're over both stories kind of clash at times. But the sheriff is also mixed in, which is another totally different storyline to pursue. But they're all good. They're all enjoyable. You just have to follow the series or the threads from each of these stories because they're all moving towards their own conclusion, but they're all tied together and they all affect each other. So it's interesting writing storytelling in that aspect. Again, that's another reason why I like the show. So episode 5, we had the judge killed in episode 4, and that being blamed on the party from Mechanical. Um, Earlier on, Shirley and Knox had discovered a list of names down at the base of the silo in their mechanical area, and there was always a note there that the problems always started being blamed on mechanical. They started with mechanical. Food shortage had caused one riot. Blamed on mechanical. There was something else blamed on mechanical. So, of course, Bernard, that must be the instructions in his manual there, and Bernard is blaming mechanical for killing the judge. He's hoping to turn the upper part of the silo against mechanical once again to get him off the hook. So episode 5 starts with the 4 that have come up from mechanical fleeing, trying to get down the staircase back to their own area, being pursued by the mob. Um, they eventually stop in the porter's office. Those are the people that have the huge backpacks on their back, and they're the lone means of moving stuff up and down the stairs because there's no elevators for some bizarre reason. Everything has to be moved by hand. Bernard is pushing to get them captured because he probably wants to dispose of them. He demotes Sims because Sims started the process with his paid actors to try to impeach the judge and get rid of her, and that forced, or at least that's what Bernard said, forced him to kill the judge. But security forces have erected a barricade at level 130, not preventing anything to get through. So that means the 4 from mechanical are more or less trapped. So they think maybe if they disguise themselves as Porter, they might be able to get by. Um, they also, at this point in the discussions about the bribe to get the help for the 4 of them, that there's a winch mentioned that that the head of supply knows that the porters have, and it's illegal for them to have it, but they say they control how product is moved, so they're entitled to it. Oh well. Um, So all while this is all going on, Bernard goes in another direction and tries to convince Jules' father to join him, but Jules' father refuses because he says he's lost everything to the silo, his wife, his son, his daughter, and his faith in the medical practice, because he was the one that was doing the surgeries. You could only have a child if you won some kind of weird lottery, and then they removed birth control that was implanted in the women. But in fact, if you were not liked by Bernard's team, which is what happened in the very first episode, that pushed the sheriff's wife to want to go outside and clean. They had won the lottery, but the sheriff did not remove the birth control device, so they never conceived. That kind of drove her a little crazy. And plus, she had a lot more time to try to figure out some of the stuff that she shouldn't have been getting involved in, and ultimately, she asked to go outside. So that's what's bothered Jules' father for all this time. So failing with Jules' father, Bernard brings in Lucas, who is a friend with Jules, but he brings him in because he does have IT skills, and he figures even though the judge cut Lucas's sentence in half to 5 years, most people don't make it past 6 months in the mines. So Bernard figures that Lucas will be well motivated to try to piece together the red level relic that Jules had, which was a hard drive. So he wants Bernard to try to restore as much data on the hard drive as possible. Um, the escapees, they split into two groups because the older people can't keep up with the younger people, and the younger people, who's Knox and Shirley, have a bounty on their heads, and everybody knows who they are, which is they don't necessarily know who Walker is. Ultimately, Walker and the head of supply um, separate because Walker's relatively anonymous up top, but the head of supply isn't. So they hope that Walker can slip by this barricade, and ultimately, when there's a disruption to the barricade, she does slip by and get back down where her former partner, gets arrested. So that's one of the changes to the book series. Walker's a man in the book series, but it doesn't seem to have changed the character and the actions of the character, so who cares whether it's a man or a woman or whatever. Um, but it's still a good storyline. Um, basically, um, when Knox and Shirley separate and they are trying to get down, they get caught, and the crowd is going to probably do some vigilante justice. But Sims's wife, who was a raider at one point, shows up in her raider gear and says, "Look, you know who my husband is. He's the current judge. He wants them uh, brought in and tried." So she gets them away, but rather than taking them back up to judicial, she stows them in some guy that's a janitor's place that she has him under her thumb, so he's afraid to deny um, Sims's wife anything. So Knox and Shirley stay there for a while. Um, Sims's wife goes back to her job in IT. They decide it's not safe to stay there because they don't trust Sims's wife, and they shouldn't. So they decide to, even though there's trouble brewing below them and they probably couldn't get through, they go back up to the porters and retrieve that winch that was talked about. Um, they take it down and strap it to the railing, being pursued by Judicial, and basically jump over the edge of the staircase and just zoom down under very little control, but they safely make it down into the down under, as they like to call mechanical. So that frustrates Bernard. He was hoping to trap them, and ultimately, all he ends up with is the head of supply. He meets with Lucas, who shows him some blueprints of the silo, and he's pointing out that Judicial has its own power and IT has its own power. When asked where it comes from, he says there's no indication of that. which seems strange that Bernard should know that. Doesn't know about the IT power or either that or he's not letting on because Solo seems to know that IT had its own power. Anyways, interesting thought that will have to be examined. But he also mentions at the base of the silo there's a tunnel, and he doesn't seem to know about the tunnel. He asks Lucas where it goes, and Lucas says no idea. What he has found is there's a letter from Salvador Quinn, who was a former IT head, just like Bernard. The letter starts off as a love letter to someone, and then gets a bit crazy. And Bernard says that's probably a code. So they um, are trying to figure out what the code is because Bernard wants to know. The reason Bernard is trying to reassemble the hard drive is when the judge uh, used to be his shadow. She never told him why she quit. There's a couple times in the last few days that they're together that she kind of hints there's something that she hasn't told Bernard, and it's very important. So Bernard is getting pretty desperate to figure out what Salvador Quinn was leaving behind him as a message to IT directors to come. Um, but yeah, that's more or less the Bernard part of the top part of Silo 18. Now the sheriffs, they in the same episode are searching for the guy who threw the Molotov cocktail at the um, sheriff's office. He was shot by a plant in the Raider force, so they're searching for him. Um, they find him ultimately, but he won't give them any info until his medical injuries are taken care of. So they have to figure out how to get a doctor um, down to help this guy. The sheriff Billings basically lies to Bernard about finding them and where they go. Um, so that's it for Silo 18. So we have the mystery that the sheriffs are working on and everything that Bernard is trying to do to quell things and everything that Shirley and Knox are trying to do to stir things up. All of it brewing, all of it moving towards a conclusion. We know ultimately that what we don't want to see happen is what happened with 17, which is all the people deciding there's nothing wrong outside and leaving the silo only to die, leaving the silo to their doom. That's what Jules is trying to prevent. So her story in Silo 17, Jules is working on a suit, trying to get her helmet to couple with the firefighter suit, but it won't. Um, Solo at this point says or mentions to Jules with no problem that the IT has its own power coming from outside. But they get into an argument. Solo wants her to fix the water pump to bail out all the groundwater that's been seeping into the silo over the years and is getting very close to the IT level. Jules says no, she doesn't want to fix it. She has to get back. They're arguing. Jules, unfortunately, is getting weaker and weaker, and we'd seen before these problems on her arm, and she's got. It looks like she's got infected in the injury that she got on her arm. Um, but she keeps searching, and she finds. During her search, she finds a notice that one of the helmets has been stolen. So she knows there's one that's out and about. But she also finds out more information from Silo that he gave a real name, not just Silo. And she finds out through a corporate directory and through a picture that he's been lying, that he's not who he said he was. Now, I don't understand why he's trying to hide his identity, but um, who knows? Anyways, when they start arguing, Silo flips out and goes pretty nuts, and Jules gets frightened and runs away. So she goes away from him, trying to continue her helmet search. She finds the room that she thinks it's in, and just as she picks up the helmet, she passes out, and that's the end of the episode. So, good episode, interesting. Again, story continues. Will Jules make it in time to save everybody? Will um, what will Bernard do in order to quell the riots, because the pact gives him some pretty strong instructions about prepare for war. So yeah, good show, well worth watching. Um, that's it for this review.